It's a lot better than I ever dreamt.
Just thought it was going to be an oak bomb or something.
That's
like
right.
That. I mean, is that typically like somebody like? It sounds so like immature for me to say, but like when you're sitting there tasting or blending, you're like, oh, it's an oak bomb, get rid of it. Like, is that like just something that's like a layman's term, or you use something else to like characterize that?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Is it really?
Is that on?
It is still on.
Yeah, I better not say it.
Here, I can turn it off. Hey everyone, this episode was a special one for me, and you'll see why if you check the unedited content that is going to be posted to Facebook in the upcoming few weeks. Hopefully that intro is an indicator of what's to come. If you haven't been following us on Facebook, then you're missing out. We currently have a giveaway running for a very unique Four Roses flask that is coming from the fine folks over at Four Roses in conjunction with last week's release with Brent Elliott from Whiskey Live, talking about the 50th anniversary release for Al Young. This contest ends on Friday, July 14th at 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So head on over there and get yourself entered. If you're interested in getting your brand in front of thousands of bourbon geeks every week, go to bourbonpursuit.com and click on the partnership tab at the very top to get all the details. More of those iTunes reviews are coming in, so thank you to all the subscribers out there for making us successful. And now, enjoy this week's episode. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
Play Whiskey Wednesday Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select 2 doors at checkout, and if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com. And you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixirs Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com.
Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast, the official podcast of bourbon. I am here again at Buffalo Trace and talking to, we've had tasters, we've had master distillers, but I don't know if we've actually had a master blender on the show today. And we don't have Ryan here in tow with me today, so it's just me riding solo with this. But it's going to be fun nonetheless, because I think we've got a great guest lined up, especially at one of the most famous and renowned distilleries that you're going to find around Kentucky. And he is easily the man responsible for pretty much everything that you're going to be tasting that's coming out of this company, as well as even some of the flavored whiskeys and all these other kind of things, right? Like and we'll talk about his history and his past and all these great things. And I think I've churched him up and given him a big enough head. So let's go ahead and welcome our guest to the show. Today we have Drew Mayville. Drew is the master blender at Sazerac / Buffalo Trace, whatever you want to call this location, OFC, George T. Stagg. We're here in Frankfort, Kentucky. So, Drew, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, I think we need to get more about you and talk about your past, because I did some LinkedIn sleuthing and kind of found out that, you're no spring chicken to this, right?
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So you've been around to this since 1980, right? So kind of talk about how you carved your path in this industry.
It was all by, I think, luck in a lot of ways. Ended up with the best job in the world. But I started back in 1980 in a distillery, working in the laboratory. And if back in the day, that was the place to be. That was where everybody wanted to be. If you were working in a distillery, you had to be in the lab, in the distillery. And it really gave me a great foundation to learn the process. There's no better foundation because you have your hands on everything working in that capacity. And then about a year later, like I was the youngest, a year later, an opportunity came up in the bottling area. And that's where everybody didn't want to go, right? So because everybody was experienced and that was the place to be, they said the youngest person will go. And hence I left. And so
take the short straw, right?
Yeah, it was the short straw. I didn't have actually a draw it, I was told.
You didn't have a straw to even have in the game.
No, there's no straw in the game. And from there, I went right to the bottling area, which I got involved a lot with packaging. But at the same time, that area had tasting. And so that's where I got into the tasting part. And that was relatively new in my career. And so that got me involved with all dimensions of a distillery besides just distilling. And tasting was a big part of the final product. And along there came many other different opportunities at Seagram. And that's where I got my start, right there in the distillery laboratory.
Yeah, so you were a Seagram's for a good chunk of your life, right?
Yes.
And we were actually on a tour with Freddie at one point, and he gave you a lot of accolades and said that you have a palate and you have a nose that's out of this world, and you were actually working on Crown Royal at one point too, right?
Yeah, when I left Seagram, or when it was sold, I was the fourth and last master blender for Seagram North America. So anything in the Seagram portfolio I was responsible for as far as taste profile was concerned. So that would be products like Crown Royal, Seagram Gin, and a brand, Captain Morgan. I think you probably heard of that. So some of the biggest brands in North America I was responsible for blending.
Mm-hmm. So I guess talk a little bit more about what do you mean by the blending process, because that's something that we talk a lot about master distillers, and we say like, oh, we'll talk about grains and blah, 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 blah. But we don't talk a whole lot about what happens after that, right? Like, yeah, sure, we got 90 barrels, we can mix them together and hopefully they make something, but there's actually somebody in the back that makes sure that it fits a flavor profile, right? And
right, that's
you're the man. So I guess kind of talk about that, what that means to be a master blender.
Well, really, the whole concept is, from what my mentor taught me, was distilling is a science, but blending is an art. And so if you look at it that way, blending puts all these components together so the sum is better than the individual parts. It's like an orchestra. If you hear one instrument, it's beautiful, but if you put all the instruments together, it's better. So blending is the same concept. Or whether you're a painter and painting, all those things together make a better product. So not just in terms of complexity, but in terms
for anybody that hears this, we've got like yard maintenance going on in the background, so we'll work through it. But go ahead, Drew.
What did you say? So blending is the art of making the taste consistent, like you just described, and it's not given the that's involved in doing it, because in the U.S., making bourbon is more about distilling. But when you make a final product, you just don't put 30 barrels together and say that's it. You have to make sure you meet the taste profile. So if you look at our distillery, we have 14 different warehouses and are building more as we speak. And what happens there is that each warehouse and each floor of the warehouse will have a different taste profile, even if it's the same recipe, just by the conditions in the warehouse and the floor it's at. So there's a lot of marrying of different components to make the final blend so it tastes consistent and complex.
I think we do ourselves a little bit disservice because you talked about your previous and your past. Who was your mentor that kind of gave you the guidance to learn all through this, or kind of gave you your shot to take the education path as well?
His name was Mr. Art Daw, and I just talked to him yesterday, as a matter of fact, and working on a project with him. But he was the second master blender for Seagram in North America, and I was the fourth. So there was only four, and he was the second one. And so it was a lot. Seagram was quite a big company and been around for many years, and that shows you the master blenders tend to stick around a long time. So maybe my future's good here, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, I don't think this place is going anywhere anytime soon, right?
Right. So he's the one that I mentored with, and that's really the path back then is to mentor with people, as opposed, there's not really any courses on how do you blend whiskeys. I don't know of any, except the one I'm giving in a few weeks in Texas.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sign yourself up there.
Yeah.
DrewMaysville.com.
Yeah. And so he was my mentor, and learned everything from him and his team at the time. And that was back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about some of the things that you also do here, right? I want to talk about the panel first off, right? Because I think that's always something that is very misunderstood, at least in the bourbon world, is that nothing just passes just because it's been aged or sitting in a warehouse. Like, everything goes through multiple rigorous tastings, and then it also goes through a panel of taste people that, such as yourself, that actually judge it, whether it fits a characteristic, and then at what point does it actually characterize itself to be in a particular kind of blend or a particular kind of whiskey. So kind of talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, let's take as an example, single barrel, which is the most complex because every barrel is slightly different. So what we're looking for is we have a standard that we agree is what it should taste and smell like. But with a single barrel, because of the variation, you have a little more leeway, but it still has to be in the same family of taste. It can't be so different. It has to be in that taste profile. A lot of it is based on age. So if you have a whiskey that's 8 years old, you're not going to go pick a whiskey that's 12 years old and say that's the product that you'd put in your blend. So you keep the age similar, and then you sample. And the way we do is we sample each barrel for, say, for instance, a single barrel. And every barrel that we actually bottle is a lot. In other words, a separate one has to be evaluated individually, and our taste panel will evaluate that. So if we do Blanton's, for example, every person on the panel has to taste each of those samples, each barrel. So it is a rigorous process, and
sounds rigorous.
Yeah, it's a tough day. Fortunately, we have a spittoon to spit, except maybe Friday afternoon.
There you go. There you go.
So we actually taste each one, and any panelist can turn a sample. And by turning a sample, we actually don't use it for that product. And a lot of scrutiny is around that, because a lot of places, even in the past, is that it would go through another review, et cetera, but we don't even bother doing that. We just don't use it for that product because we feel it doesn't match the taste profile, and it's just one person, so it's very discriminating. And that reason behind it is that one person can pick up characteristics that, say, most people can't. And there are people more sensitive to certain characteristics. And so that's why it's so difficult to go through the panel. It's easy to go through the panel, but it's difficult to reject something. But if you do see a difference, you'd actually turn it. We don't use it for that product. So it's actually probably one of the most discriminating in the industry.
So it's rejected, then what happens?
Well, see, when it's rejected, everybody thinks that there's something wrong with it, but it just doesn't match that taste profile. So you can let it age up, so you can put it in a bigger blend, or you can use it in a blend that's got a very young age. You're talking 1 barrel. It's not a big deal, especially if you have 500 barrels in a batch, in a big batch bourbon.
It's not going to make that big of an impact.
It will make no impact.
I guess that's a good question. Like, at what point does the amount of barrels actually make less and less impact, right? I mean, like 2 barrels versus 500 barrels. Like, what's the impact or blending that you're just like?
There is no hard and fast rule. It depends on the product. But I can tell you, we take it
because there's no science, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's sensory, right? And we are putting more science to it, but it's very difficult. But I'll give you a good example is we look at Pappy Van Winkle on a regular basis. We're looking at it next week with Julian when he comes in. And each barrel for him is important. So we would turn some barrels when we're looking at the samples, and people would think, okay, so it's 23-year-old. There's only so much available.
I was about to say, so if you don't have a 23-year-old W.O. Weller recipe, then what happens to it, right? And if he turns away.
Right, but most people will think, you'll just blend it in and you'll lose, that characteristic or something that doesn't match. But I've seen it myself. We reject barrels for Pappy Van Winkle because it doesn't match the taste profile. And we don't even test it. We will not use it. We just don't think it's the right thing to do. And so a lot of companies would have a hard time doing that, but actually we don't think too hard about it. And if it doesn't match what we think the final product should taste like, we don't put it in that particular marriage, which is really, people don't realize that we're pretty serious about the taste of the product.
So when I think about this, I was going to tee up a question that said like what are some labels you're blending for? But now I'm thinking about this. I was like, what are the labels that you're not blending for, right? Because that you don't have a hand in. There's only 2 I can think of, which might be Blanton's or MRT Lee, because those are the only 2 single barrel products that are really coming out of here, right?
You're right.
So I mean, I guess is there anything that I guess besides those that you're really not putting your hands on?
No. And when you say blending, we like to say in the industry here, marrying.
Okay.
See, blending has a negative connotation for most people because it's like a cheap whiskey. So when you say blending, it's really a misnomer. I mean, it can give you a better product, but the way people interpret it is to be something that's not good or it's cheap. So we like to call it marrying those elements together, and that's what we do. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Well,
on your question.
If that's the word, you should be the Colonel blender, right? The master blender or the captain blender, right? Well, it's like the master. Everybody's a master, right?
Well, yeah, it can be used pretty easily. Even if you've never been in the industry, you can be a master or whatever.
Right. So I guess we were kind of talking about the different kinds of labels and stuff, right?
So I just want to go back to that single barrel concept. Even though you're not marrying anything together, you are choosing the barrels individually. So in other words, if it doesn't meet the taste profile and the expected taste profile of say a single barrel, then it's not going to be used for that, and we'll use it in a large blend. So
I guess that also kind of I want to take let's take Eagle Rare for just an example, right? Because it's not technically a single barrel or anything like that, and maybe even just regular Buffalo Trace. I mean, at what point, how many barrels are you sampling, and how large are these batches to be able to say, okay, I'm going to go and we need, I don't know, 250 barrels or 150. I don't know how many it is. And are you sampling each one of them, make sure they fit the flavor profile, or just hope? I mean, at this point, I know you're just not, swing and a miss. We're just going to keep adding barrels until it starts tasting good, right? What's that thought process?
Well, on some of our brands, we'll have a blending plan for the year, and we'll actually take samples and pre-blend them. So we're not looking for some. If we were looking at every barrel we put into one of these marriages, we would be doing it forever, day and night. So there's no way you can do it. So we'll take representation of the different lots and do that, and we'll actually plan out, because with certain brands, I have seasons that I move, I want complexity. So I'll actually take some different seasons from different years and mix it together. So you're getting that variety. And also that funny enough, it can add to the consistency of the product too, because we're doing that. But it also gives you that complexity that you wouldn't get if you just season to season to season. And so that's the challenge, is to make it taste the same every year. But the plan will be out, say, a year, and we'll work on that plan, and then we'll execute the plan for the coming year. And then, like I said, we can take samples so we can actually see how it's aging. And this blending, I learned from the best in the industry. Seagram's was the best blender and known for it all over the world. So the complexity here is complex compared to most of our competitors as far as that's concerned.
So you talked about the seasons, and that made me think of something like I could almost work in a marketing department, because I just figured out the new E.H. Taylor limited release that you're going to come out with, and it's the 4 seasons, right? So we've got distillation from fall, winter, spring, and summer, right?
You might be closer than you think.
See, how weird is that, right?
See, that's the beauty of the Buffalo Trace, is that we're allowed to think that way. So the way you're thinking is the way we like to think. So when we have our experimental meetings twice a year, and it goes up, we have, like, it's getting bigger and bigger, the group, but we have a lot of stakeholders there, up into including the president of the company. Mm-hmm. That's how much we believe in making better whiskey for the future. So we'll have discussions on what we think, and we will talk about, just you described, how would that look? What if we blend it before we put in the barrel? I mean, all these things that you just went through, and people that's listening would have ideas. We have those same ideas, and we actually encourage people, if they have ideas, bring them to us, because we'll probably use them. They'll be on our list. Mm-hmm. So those are exciting things for someone like myself or Harlan to actually implement, because even though it takes away from what we do to make our regular product, that's the most fun part, is that those new things. What can you come up with? How can you change your recipe to make it like a 6 grain that actually will add complexity and actually make a whiskey? Or what can you do about the aging warehouse? Well, how do you make a better whiskey that way through warehouse X? Or what if you process it different and maybe you make a better whiskey that way? Those are the things that excite us. And twice a year, that's my most favorite meeting of the year, is we brainstorm and bring ideas to the table, and we actually execute what we're going to do for the next 6 months, and come back again and do it all over again.
So talk about the bottle that you have here, because it is a Buffalo Trace experimental collection, and it kind of you've got an organic 6 grain blend that you have here. So you've gone above and beyond the E.H. Taylor 4 grain, right? So I guess another question, when we go ahead and talk about this one a little bit, just because there's a lot of experimental 375s that hit the market over the span of the past, 7 years, right?
Yes.
They've been out there for quite a while. You don't see them too much anymore, but nowadays, just because of, maybe there's just not as much distribution of whatever it is, but just kind of talk about what you have here and kind of about the experimental collection as well.
Well, if when we started this is all about experimenting and trying to see what these things do to a whiskey or a bourbon. And that's why you don't see very much of it, because we only made a few barrels of each, some more than others. And let me see, this one is aged 7 years and 1 month, but it's using 6 grains. I guess the next thing, to your point, is probably 10 grain, right?
I don't know. Is quinoa part of there yet? Like, I don't know. It's
pretty close. So this is a bourbon. It's corn, buckwheat, brown rice, sorghum, wheat, and rye. And it's aged 7 years and 1 month. And most people won't be able to taste this because there's not much made. But it was part of an experiment to see how these grains would, marry together and age. So that's why I brought this one. And like you say, it's organic. And it's quite different, and it's very complex. Whether everybody likes it, I don't know. But that's the purpose of the experiment, is to see if there's a way of making better whiskey. And this is just one experiment of many that we have.
And that kind of goes to the next question. I've talked to quite a few, industry pundits and all this other kind of stuff. And Buffalo Trace has probably done almost everything under the sun when it comes to experimentation.
No, not yet.
Well, that's what. But you've done a lot, right?
Yes.
We'll say the history of what's been going on for 100+ years. That's you guys have tried a lot of stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So at what point do you say okay, we're either onto something, or should we be like, let's just stick to making good bourbon?
Oh no, we'll never do that. That's part of our culture, is that continual improvement. We believe we haven't made the best whiskeys yet. Even though we've won more awards than any other distillery on the planet, even though our customers buy everything we make, it's not good enough. We still have to be making the best whiskey. So the whiskeys that we make today may not be the whiskeys of the future. So that thinking is inbred in our culture, is that we have to make better whiskeys and strive to learn to make better whiskeys. And so that's why we do so many experiments, but you don't see the results yet. And the reason you don't is because if we like something, we're putting more away. And that's the
what are you putting away? That's my next question.
We can't tell you right now.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, here's the list. No. So that's as far as working in a distillery, being part of that team, this experiment part, like I said, is extremely interesting, such that it keeps you thinking about the next 6 months when we meet, what we're going to do and what we're going to put away. So if we've put some of our experiments away trying to make better whiskey because we think it's a superior whiskey.
So we'll talk about just some of those experiments that you think that you've tried and were a cut above the rest, right? Let's stick out of the regular portfolio of what you have. Maybe they've been some of the experimental collections that's been released to the public. Maybe there's some of those single oak project barrels that ever made it out. I mean, are there any of those that you think were a cut above the rest, or you still think that you're going to hold true that we're still experimenting?
Yeah, that's an underhanded way to get me to reveal what we're putting away. It's just the way. Yeah, I get it.
No, I'm being honest though. But I mean, if there's something that
there's lots of them actually. We did the French oak, and it turned out superb. It was a very excellent whiskey. Although we've done experiments that I think we've learned a lot from the single oak, and we're actually going to make what we feel was the best whiskey and what the customer voted as being the best whiskey for the future. It's going to be under the single oak name. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we found out is that the superior whiskey, in our opinion, and according to our customers, was one that the oak staves were seasoned longer than we seasoned them. And we seasoned them a long time. And then when I say seasoned, people think just add salt and pepper, but it's not.
Maybe some paprika.
Yeah, not quite. But it's basically leaving the oak staves aging outside, so you get rid of all the undesirables, and we're leaving it longer than what we do, much longer, actually made a better whiskey. So you could probably anticipate that's what we're going to do for that product. So there's lots of the examples that I could give. One that I developed was the IR experiment. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Probably doesn't have anything to do with infrared, but keep going. Or is it infrared?
Yes. So when we worked with the barrel company and basically used different infrared treatments on the interior of the barrel. So it changed the chemical structure on the interior, and then they charred it. And we went with, medium and short wavelengths to actually change it. So we have that experiment that we actually just put out. And I found it was superior. We aged it around 6-7 years. And I thought it was excellent whiskey. I would love to do more and actually age it longer. I wish we'd keep some. But that's the thing with experiments, is that you do an experiment and you find out a result, and if you like it or if you don't like it, what you find out is, oh my, what if we did this now? So there's actually sometimes more questions than you've answered, and you keep experimenting. So it's a process that's going to take a long time. Mm-hmm. And the main reason is because you get your results 6, 8, 10 years later.
Right.
And you have to live long enough to actually see the result.
That's what to say. It's what you call job security right there, right?
Yeah, that's a guaranteed job security. But regardless.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
So I want to talk a little bit more about some of those characteristics that you're trying to find for different labels, different brands, especially when you're doing your job and you're trying to blend them together, right? So if I'm looking at a Buffalo Trace, or I'm looking at a Eagle Rare, or I'm looking at Old Charter, or whatever it is, right? What are those characteristics that you're looking for in each one of these that are different, that really separate them across? And then is there a baseline that you're comparing them to while you're doing the blending as well? So just a little bit more about the process side.
Yeah, so let's take Buffalo Trace as an example, and even versus Eagle Rare. A Buffalo Trace is around 8 years, so you want that taste profile, which is what our standard goes back actually to the second production run of Buffalo Trace ever. And that standard is what we're targeting. So with Buffalo Trace, it's got a taste profile that has I like to call it a balanced taste. And the reason I call it balanced is because you can taste the sweetness from the corn, the spiciness from the rye, and the oak and wood flavors on the finish especially. And that taste profile is what we're looking for. Whereas you compare the taste profile of Buffalo Trace to Eagle Rare, you'll see all those characteristics, but it's not balanced as much. And Eagle Rare is, say, aged 2 more years. So that 2 years, it changes. So you've got more of that oak and that dry characteristics on the finish, where you lose some of that fruitiness, at least the raw sweetness. And it actually, 2 more years development gives you deeper, darker fruits. And it gives you a different type of spice, not as spicy, it's more refined. So that taste profile is for that. And then if you go even further to, say, George T. Stagg, it's a total different game because of the development and the complexity of the aging. So that aging makes it much more complex, but at the same time, because you're aging it so long in a new oak barrel, the wood components change it too. It's not as easy to pick out the components, and for most people anyways. So that taste profile is what we're aiming for, and that's what we try to match. So you have some deviation around that, but not much.
So let's talk about those premium lines real quick. The Antique Collection, the Van Winkles. When you're doing these, is it all hands on deck? Everybody better be on their their A game and stuff like that. It's not another day at work when it comes to those sorts of.
No, we're
products.
getting geared up right now to start doing that. So we'll be doing that in the next few weeks. Mm-hmm. Which is always exciting.
Their hand. I mean, I can make a day off.
Well, it's a strenuous process for the Antique Collection because everybody is such high regard for it. The pressure's on, right? It's like, and it really is vintage. Every year it's a different product, slightly, but it's different. So I'll get notes from the boss saying, well, this writer didn't like this. And it's so much pressure on us to perform every year on every product. But what's the best part is that one may not like it and the other loves it. So it's actually depending on the person's a lot. But every year we get into this mode, which we're getting into, where we actually sample the barrels and decide whether that's going to be next year's or this year's release in the fall. So we don't have much time. That's the challenge. But if we don't like something, we'll look at it, we'll compare it to previous years because I want to make sure not deviating too much. And then we'll actually make the determination, is there something that's not right? Is it good enough? And I make that call. So if you don't like it, it's my fault. If you like it, it's my fault. So we'll look at lots of samples. We'll dissect it, take it apart, draw on anything we have in the distillery. Anything goes. And that's kind of fun because you get to pick and choose anything for its highest priority. So the pressure's on every year, and hopefully we do a good job this year and everybody loves it.
Well, good. So that's actually, I'm glad we talked about that because it made me think of a next question, because like Sazerac 18, like it went from the pre-tank stuff and the tank stuff, and then it was all new Buffalo Trace product this past year, and it was completely different. For most people, they thought it was a big change. Did you think it was a big change? Is there something that you're looking for to hopefully maybe take it back to the way it was before, or try to just go off in a new direction? Like what's your thought process?
No, for that one, when I first came here, it was 18 years, and I said take it out of wood. So that's why we took it out of wood. If you let it age too much, it may have been a terrible product. So we took it out, and we, because straight rye wasn't a big factor, we didn't have lots of it, right? So we had to meter it out every year, basically, and that's what we did on that tank to what you just described. And so that process, even when we first started doing it, people thought it was different year to year to year. Surprisingly, right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, there's people that, they think it's different, but yeah, it's coming out of the same stainless steel tank for up until last year, right?
Yeah, but I would argue, especially for the beginning part, that you probably had differences because of oxidation and other reactions. There's probably, just like in a bottle, it changes slightly over time. So I would argue that. And then last year we brought out the first time that we selected the barrels, and it was a little bit fresher. It was a little bit newer. But you let that sit, it will get closer to what we had previously. But I don't know if I can tell them this.
You can tell it. It's fine. It's okay. It's okay.
Nobody's listening?
Nobody's listening.
No, I better not. I got to watch. Sometimes I say too much. And then nobody knows.
That's why we got to kick the PR person out of the room next time.
You're gone, so.
No, it's okay. Keep going, though.
So with Sazerac Rye, the idea is to make the best product with the barrels we have. So I look at it every year, it's going to be different. And when we're selecting it, no different than Stag or William LaRue, it's going to be slightly different every year. And the idea behind it is vintage, like I said previously. So it's kind of making each unique every year. So I get people, especially for the uncut, unfiltered, ask me all the time, well, what about that 142.3 proof one? They know every year what the proof was. I have no clue.
They're actually on Wikipedia. If you go, all the proofs of every single one are actually on Wikipedia.
And there are people who know that and memorize it. And they know, but they're really fans, right?
Absolutely.
And I just can't be bothered to learn that and remember that because every year it's going to be slightly different. And that's the beauty of the product, I think, where you get something slightly different. And we try to keep it in the same age profile, in the same taste profile. And it's possible usually. And, we have some chances once in a while we take, There's one year we did, some of the barrels I picked were from the lower floors, so the proof wasn't as high. And everybody, oh my goodness.
If it's not hazmat, then is this even stag anymore?
But the taste was really good. I think most people liked it. So it was a risk. That was the biggest risk I've taken. And it was because of the proof. And then it's going to be a slightly different taste. It's not going to be the same as what a 143. But the beauty of our products is no matter what I pick, they're good products. So it's easy. My job's pretty easy.
Yeah, I was about to say, you have the pick of the cream of the crop there.
And if I like the taste of a product, I'll probably resample many times and enjoy each time. No, I'm just kidding.
I would too. So the other one, even like this past year, there was way more William LaRue Weller that came out than even previous years before then. So was the idea that we can create more an abundance of it for everybody that's getting into this by taking some, because most of them were around, I think 12, 13 years. I think in this past year's William LaRue Weller, whereas before then they might have been up to 13, 15 years old and stuff like that. So is there an idea that we're trying to make more of this to be able to satisfy more of the market too?
No, it's not. It was just the year there was more available, or for whatever reason, more by chance, I suspect, as opposed to planned to make. We're making more of all these products, but it was just more yield, more wherever it wasn't stored, etc. So it depends on how many barrels are there, or if it's older than 12 years. If you're talking Weller. We put some 12-year in, but we have a lot of older stuff in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can taste it, actually. Most people can. So it was just happen chance. This year we did Pappy 25, and we didn't get as much yield as we expected. We expected so much, and we didn't get as much. So there's, unfortunately, sad customers out there.
Well, I mean, there's a price tag on it that's going to push out a lot of the market too. And as he brings it out of his pocket, there we go.
I did bring
oh my gosh. My day just got better. So I guess, talk about a little bit, I don't want to harp on it too much because there's so many people that are out there that is never going to get the chance to be able to taste this. But what was it like to be able to sit there and do one of the oldest vintages that's actually coming out of this distillery and making itself to the retail market?
Absolutely fantastic. It's probably one of the best whiskeys I've ever tasted. And it's probably the most surprising, more surprising that it is. It's baffling, because as you get older, it doesn't necessarily mean better, especially for something like this that's aged in Kentucky in new barrels. But this one happened to turn out fantastic. For whatever reason, I have no clue. But it's absolutely fabulous. So you got a nice balance there. You got a lot of oak flavors, but it's balanced, more balanced than I ever thought or dreamt. So it actually turned out really good. So it's really a crime that most people won't taste this, because it will be kept in those bottles sealed by most collectors.
And I guess that's the other thing to kind of think about. When you're doing this, I mean, are you thinking of are weeded whiskeys doing better at a higher age than some of like the rye whiskeys and stuff like that? I mean,
definitely.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. It could be for a lot of reasons because of the grain, but one is, I think, proof too. And the reason is because the lower the proof, the slower it matures, just because you're not extracting with the alcohol, right? So we traditionally put in at 114. We've actually done experiments on lower proofs, and we've done experiments at higher proofs. And the one we liked is the one we put in. But it's based on the traditional age that we like to draw it out. But if you put in one of those, say a wheated bourbon at a lower proof, say 100 proof instead of 114, when it could age up to 25, 30 years old, no problem. And that's the learning from these experiments, is we know how to make better whiskey. If you're targeting a 50-year-old product, maybe that's the way you get there. Because if you had a regular product like Buffalo Trace, and you just let it aged up to 50 years, you probably wouldn't like the taste. So there's a little bit of science there too, because
I mean, what do you I guess you probably know, but I mean, what's the oldest barrel that you still have sitting around here? Is that some information that you can divulge?
Not really.
No idea. Or just can't say it. Yeah, because it might be.
I have no clue.
There you go. Play dumb.
But just remember that you just can't age in Kentucky in new barrels with the temperature fluctuation and the new barrel very long unless you do extraordinary things. And that's why I like this one so much, this 25, because it surprised me. It actually really surprised me and happily surprised me.
Right. Well, that's what I didn't even think I was ever going to try it, so I never even.
But did I say you're going to try it?
No, you didn't. I'm going to hint at it though. But I mean, I just figured that I was like never even tried to go for it. I was like maybe if I see it at a bar, I can maybe expense it or something like that. Right? That'd be the only way I'll ever get my hands on it.
Well, the thing is, we do make fantastic products, no matter if it's the high end or the average. In terms of price point. So people got to remember that products like this start out with our base Weller. So you're getting a fantastic price and a fantastic product for the price. And it's just a matter of aging that, which is a lot more complex than I'm describing, but it's just a great product. And so when people say, oh, I love your Stag, that's great. But it comes from products like Buffalo Trace. It's the same recipe, just maybe aged longer in different locations. It's the same recipe. So you can get a great quality product for a good price.
So I guess that's going to kind of go into a next question of like, what's your favorite one to blend, right? Because you do Buffalo Trace probably day in, day out, right? Probably do Eagle Rare. What about like Stag Junior? You've got the Antique Collection. You've got Van Winkles, you got WL Weller, you got the 107s, you've got Weller 12. There's so many lines that come over here. So like, what is your favorite one that you think that you could blend on a daily basis and just be like the happiest guy ever?
That's like asking which is your favorite child.
Oh yeah,
come on.
We always have to choose.
Yeah. Actually, my favorite.
We just don't say it, right?
My favorite is Buffalo Trace. It's actually fun, and I actually love Buffalo Trace. I think it's the best bourbon that we've got for the best price. And you can argue for any of them, whether you like the Weller 12 or you like the Sazerac Rye. But Buffalo Trace for me is kind of like the best for balance and for blending, as far as fun is concerned. But I like them all, to be honest with you. If this Junior and all the Antique, and whether it be Pappy, I mean, everything is fantastic. You're working with some of the best whiskeys in the world here.
Yeah, you're spoiled riches, essentially,
yes.
Right?
Well, what's the most fun, personally, is developing the new products, and that's the most fun.
And I kind of want to talk about that because I thought I read somewhere that the Buffalo Trace Bourbon Cream was your baby.
Yes, yeah, and it's a long story about that.
We've got time.
Well, I was having dinner with my boss and suggested that we do some things just like the bourbon cream. And he says, why not? Go for it. So I did it. And I came back with samples. You got to remember, I came from the largest distiller in the world, which was Diageo. And so I brought him variations. And obviously I used young whiskey all the way up. And basically, the one I prefer wasn't the youngest whiskey because you can't taste it the way you do an older one that's more mature. So he said, and this is the honest truth, he says, make it with the one that tastes best. And so that's what I did. So what's in there to this day is Buffalo Trace whiskey in the bourbon cream. So why does it taste so good? It's because of the quality of the ingredients. And it's that easy. So we're not adding neutral grain spirits. We're not adding all these things in that a lot of places do because you can. We're using the natural product. So it's the easiest thing to do to give you the best product. And I think, we have a lot of customers who say that's the best they've ever tasted in terms of that type of product. So we're making something for everybody. So that was my new product. And actually back then there wasn't a lot of people doing a lot of things. So I did also the marketing prep, what bottle it should go in. And this is like 10, 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I did all that. It
came out in the market, what, probably 5 years ago? Is that when it actually hit the market?
I think a little longer than that.
Okay.
And we actually, we don't make a product and sell it all over the U.S. and 20 million in advertising. What we do, and this is what we did with Buffalo Trace, is we started it, the cream, we started in the gift shop. And the reaction was extremely positive. So as people asked for it, we started expanding it to other areas. And to this day, it's not available everywhere. And it's because we're waiting for the demand for people to want it, for it to come out. So it's a totally different marketing approach. And it takes time to do that. But that's what they call building brands that a lot of people have forgotten about. And it's word of mouth. We're not advertising in full page in magazines or newspapers or anything. It's just word of mouth.
And that, or you said, like, we're missing the breakfast market. That's
And I'll give you another example. Hartley, or not Hartley. Yeah.
Hartley.
Wheatley.
Yeah, we know Harlan Wheatley.
No, I was going to say Hartley Brandy, but that's another one we have. But Wheatley vodka is the same thing. Gift shop first, and now it's expanding into certain markets, but people want it. So it's a different approach to building brands, maybe. Maybe it's traditional, but it works.
Okay, so here's another big ticket item. Are you the man responsible for Fireball?
That's a tough question because I was at Seagram when Seagram owned that brand.
Okay.
And someone who actually worked for me developed it. I think he might be retired by now. It's been a while.
So you were like one person removed from it, right?
Yeah, it was. But when it came to Sazerac, I'm responsible for it, yes.
And a lot of that whiskey is coming from Canada, if I'm not mistaken, right, for Fireball.
Yeah. We don't talk about too much
about where that's coming from.
No.
Well, talk about some of the other finishes that you're doing for your whiskeys, because I know that you're talking about the experimentation. You talk about Buffalo Trace, the BT cream. Talk about some of those other kind of finishes that you're thinking about of mixtures or whatever it is that is, I guess you can say, excites you too at this point.
Finishes don't excite me, be honest with you.
Okay. You were talking about the experimentation, and I thought that was just part of it, maybe.
We've done that. We've done experiments where we actually age it in those barrels. So like 7-8 years. I'm talking Buffalo Trace products. We've decided to do finishing on other products. We do it on 1792. We've done that port finish.
Port finish.
It was fabulous.
Yeah.
It really.
Sweet wheat. There's a few of them out there.
There's I have a different view. Sometimes when you buy a finished whiskey or bourbon in the market, it tastes just like the product, the finish, whatever you put into it, which is not the right way for me. My perspective should be balanced with the whiskey, so it accents the whiskey. So that's my philosophy in finishing. If it goes too far, if you have it in port and it's all like port, it's not the way it should be as far as I'm concerned. So we are finishing a lot of our products with different types of casks, and it seems pretty readily available, these casks. So we're working on that now in different products. But you won't see it on Buffalo Trace.
Okay. So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about like home blenders, people that blend their own bottles. They make infinity bottles. They, they try to grab some wheated whiskey. They take some rye whiskey and they put it in their little decanter. They wait a month, 6 months, a year. Like, can you give tips? Do you say, leave it to me and the pros to figure this out? Like, what's your kind of feeling about there?
Are you talking those little barrels and stuff? Or
you could talk about the little barrels.
Or are you talking post-blending of finished products?
Post-blending of finished products, yeah.
Oh, well, good for them.
Yeah.
That's exciting, actually. Maybe they want my job. Huh? But actually, there's a lot of room for work. I've been working myself, actually, on a new project, and it looks pretty darn good where I've done that. But the tips, if it's in a barrel, those little barrels, I think you're probably doomed for failure, unfortunately. And the only reason I say that is because the ratio of liquid to barrel is not really appropriate. We've done experiments with small barrels, and we actually threw the product away just because it just dominates that oaky dryness. It's just way too strong. I'm not saying it doesn't work for other people under other conditions, but for us, it just didn't work. So I've seen people put their White Dog in a barrel, and it comes out, just like I said, very simple, one-dimensional. It will not age properly.
In somebody's basement, right? Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think it's the fun of it, and which I think is good. And if people enjoy it and they taste it and they like it, why not?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to make a world-class whiskey that way. But it'd be fun. And post-blending is interesting. I haven't heard that, where they actually mix different types of whiskeys. And actually,
I can give you an example. I saw somebody that was trying to say, like, you'll get X amount of bottles if you donate this many bottles. And they were taking, they had a barrel. There was a W.L. Weller barrel. And they took, you had X amount of bottles of W.L. Weller, X amount of bottles of 107, and X amount of bottles of Weller 12. And they put them all back in the barrel, and they tried marrying them for another year just to see what was going to happen.
Everybody wants to make Pappy. That's right. It's not going to make Pappy, but it'll give you something that's different, and that's probably what they like. It's not going to be too successful, although I've heard poor man's Pappy and all that stuff, how people blend and trying to make it taste like that, but it won't be. It won't be. It may be a little bit different from what they started with, but it's not going to be that.
It's not going to be the exact same thing, right?
It won't be.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, I know a lot of people they'll take Stag Junior and they'll mix it with something else, and they think that they can take the post blending and they think they're doing something good with it. But
they are in their own minds and they're enjoying it, so why not? I mean, if they feel they are, that's great.
Yeah.
But if they're trying to match something, and they won't match. But if they're making it different and they like the taste, go for it.
Right. Well, cool. So last question I'll kind of leave you with here is, Harlan has his vodka. And if you have your way, what sort of spirit do you want your name across?
Oh, it's coming out soon.
Oh, man alive. It's like,
but it won't be my name on it.
I'm asking all the right questions here, aren't I?
Actually, I have a Canadian whiskey. I have my signature on it now. So it's only available in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not.
You are Canadian too, right?
Right.
Okay. That's why today's been so polite, right?
Well, that's a compliment. Thank you. There's no plans for my picture like Harlan's picture on, and I'm kind of in the shadows, especially in the industry here. The blender is certainly not top billing. It's the distiller, which is where it should be for this type of product. Whereas if I was in Canada, I would be the star of the show because the blender is what it's about. Distiller, a lot of people don't know who the distiller is.
Because everything at that point is pretty much blended, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the same if you go to Scotland too. It's changing a little bit, but you'll hear about the blender a lot. So that's why I like going to Canada and Scotland, because I'm the star. No, I'm just kidding.
The red carpet gets rolled out for you there.
But here I'm in the background, and I think I'm an important part of the process and the team here at Buffalo Trace. And certainly Harlan and I work together pretty close. But I'm fine with that. That's fine with me.
Well, good. As long as the single barrels don't put you out of business, right? I mean, that's what it's supposed to be there for.
Yeah, you still need us for that.
Good deal. So, Drew, I want to say thank you again for coming on the show today. It was
You're
a pleasure to talk to you, learn more, especially about your background. Like I said, you've got a rich history. You've been doing this forever, and I think you're probably the best in the game. And I think next time we'll roll out the red carpet for you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So if you like what you hear, make sure you tell a friend. It's the best way to spread the news of bourbon and knowledge is just letting them know that if they're getting into this, make sure you talk about the podcast. Everybody's got to drive to work in the morning, so make sure that they listen to this. Write a review on iTunes. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also leave those reviews on iTunes. As I just said, if you own a business or you work in marketing for a company, we have partnerships available. Go to bourbonpursuit.com, look for the partnership tab at the top, and you can read more about our media kit right there. If you have any more questions or suggestions for the show, please send me an email. It's theduo, THEDUO @bourbonpursuit.com. And with that, we will see you all next week.